There's Sherry. You can see her now. That pink jacket is perfect.
It being 1 o'clock, the scheduled time for our meeting, I'd like to bring to order the 1836 Advisory Committee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Frazier. Here. Senator Creighton. Dr. Krim. Here. Mr. Edison. Mr. Sinclair.
Here.
Delaire, sorry.
That's all right.
Mr. Patterson. Ms. Sylvester.
Here.
Mr. Woodard.
A quorum is present. So we've got a lot of great things to talk about today, but just to review where we are with the 1836 project, I want to start by thanking the hospitality of this fantastic museum. Perhaps, well, it's the flagship museum in the state and one of the finest museums in the country. And we're really, really honored to be here. This is a great facility. Also, West Texas A&M, one of the fine institutions in our state, and being in the Panhandle where Texas is still easily recognizable. And we are really, really happy to be here too. I also want to introduce Shannon Smith, who's the district director for Senator Kevin Sparks. Thanks for throwing in with us today and attending our meeting. So the 1836 project is really about capturing the essence of Texas as Texas is moving into the future. This is not about worshiping the embers and the ashes. This is about passing the torch forward into the future. So we're still live fire here. We're not smoldering. And the idea is that Texas is a unique place that has attracted a lot of people over time for particular reasons. And we have a story to tell. According to the legislation, we have a task, a role in patriotic education across the state. And patriotic education is just essentially acknowledging that we're all from some place. And this place that we're from had a process on how it became this place. And that is really the essence of the patriotic education mandate in the legislation. But we're also here to promote awareness of that history and advise the governor of our core principles, the Texas core principles that make Texas what Texas is. Also, to help develop some tangible products. We've already done the 1836 brochure. It's really more of a booklet that is being distributed across DPS offices all around the state. And the other tangible, the product that we're looking forward to is helping to develop the Governor's 1836 Award. We also are, according to the law, to advise state agencies and to support the dissemination to the public of knowledge of the founding of Texas and how we came to be the place that we are. So I can tell you, Canyon's a long ways away from the rest of the state. It was a good 6-hour drive for me from Kerrville, and I know folks from Huntsville had to finally throw in the towel and fly up here. But I can tell you it was so good to be back in West Texas. And looking at the sunset last night and looking at the sort of boundless the horizons. You know, one of the things that I loved about living in West Texas when I was in Abilene is, you know, you look to the right and left, it can look an awful lot alike, but the sky is always different. And I always said that, you know, when you live in West Texas, you're always looking up. And there's reason for that. It is under that, the vault of heaven This is a really charming part of the state. And a lot of times, I know that living in the Panhandle probably feels remote from the rest of the state as well. So I really, really wanted to be intentional about bringing the 1836 project here to this remarkable part of the state. The playa lakes, the grass, the cattle, the cotton, all of it just oozes Texas. And I found that to be worth the 6-hour drive easy. Plus you get to go through places like Ballinger and Sweetwater and, see the rest of the state. So there's an awful lot of Texas going on. One of the things that struck me though, as I stopped for a bite in Sweetwater, is that the people I talked to in that service industry were from California. They were new to Texas, and they had left California for the bright lights of Sweetwater. And I found that to be kind of interesting, but that is so indicative of what we're facing here in the state. And this was the nicest young lady you could hope to meet. I couldn't have told that she wasn't born and raised in Texas from looking at her. I mean, she looks like the rest of us. But what she's missing is that piece of the Texas story. And I think that we have a great opportunity with this endeavor to help natives and newcomers find their place in this Texas story. And by doing that, then we'll actually be even greater from the reinforcements that are coming. And that's exciting. So I think we're all very lucky and very blessed to be here. And thanks again to the remarkable hospitality of all the folks here in Canyon. Now, speaking of reinforcements, we have great news. We have been reinforced. We have recently hired our 1836 Project Committee Director, and he is here with us today, Mr. Charles Wright. He comes to us with a fantastic background, having taught history in Texas and was also a founder and superintendent of a classical charter school in Colorado, growing it to more than 1,000 students. Now then, we rescued him from the Golden State. No, that's not, it's the Centennial State, isn't it? All right, sorry, Golden State, that's the girl in Sweetwater. We rescued him from Colorado, just leave it there, and brought him back to his roots. He's a 7th generation native Texan, but also possesses a keen sense of where this committee can flourish and reach many more Texans to increase the knowledge of Texas history, culture, and promote Texas pride. So if you wouldn't mind, Charles, I'd like to turn it over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself. We hired him by the yard, by the way. He's a tall guy.
By the yard. All right, well, my name is Charles Wright. I am from Waco, Texas. I am a 7th generation Texan. We only lived in Colorado for 10 years. But we did move back and hurry back into the great state. But first off, I just want to thank the committee for the tremendous opportunity and the responsibility that you've given me to help promote the understanding of Texas history to those that already live here, to have help them have more understanding, and to those who are coming in to help them understand the Texas way, which is very important to me, especially as I've moved back and gotten to see. It's my honor to stand upon the foundation that others have before me built to promote the great pride and the patriotism we have for Texas. I really believe that we'll be a stronger, we'll be a healthier Texas when more people understand our history. I think that'll help tremendously, and people understand what makes us exceptional and who we are. I really look at it this way because at the end of the day, if we build our future upon the understanding, we build it upon the understanding of our past. So that's how we build our future. Our people here in Texas have to understand the past. And I think it's imperative that we persevere in the fight, and I say fight to uphold the legacy and the history of Texas for future generations and not lose what makes Texas, Texas. And that's extremely important to me as this job, and I'm really excited to be here to reinforce you.
Appreciate you. All right, we have a pretty full agenda today, and we've got some great folks that have come to visit with us about what they're doing across the state and what they're doing in their own backyard to help with this same sort of task that we're all on. So without any more, with that, I have nothing else to add. Did anybody have any business from the,
I'm just glad to be here.
okay.
It's great to leave Austin and come to Texas, so let's do it.
It's easy to get here, but hard to get back to Houston.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going back through Denver, so,
Wow.
but it was direct flight to Amarillo, so that's great.
All right, so we don't have our name tags or nameplates up before us, but that's Greg Sindler on the left, Mac Woodward here to my left, immediate left, and then Carolina Krim on my right. And then Sherry Sylvester, also on the committee, is in by teleconference. So that's who is here today. But we also have guests to provide invited testimony to the 1836 committee. And so I would like to call Dr. Walter V. Wendler, President of West Texas A&M University, to present to the committee. Dr. Wendler.
Chairman Frazier, thanks so much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you and the group this afternoon. We're very pleased to be here. And I'm pleased you all have had a chance to visit the museum. It is a remarkable museum that catalogs so much of what's important to this part of Texas. And I believe, as has already been said, to the whole state of Texas. In many ways, it's an outpost for Texas values. Being so far from Austin and Houston and Dallas, we haven't changed as much as some of those areas. By the way, this is coming from, some people say you're a Yankee. I said, no, I'm a damn Yankee. I came and stayed. I wasn't here for a short time. I got here in 1970 to attend Texas A&M University. I got off the bus. I left, at the time it was, I guess it'd been named JFK Airport. I was going to say it was Idlewild, but anyway, got off the bus in College Station after I rode up from Houston. And I thought to myself, Lord, what have I done? It was like the moon to me. But anyway, it's been a great opportunity to learn about a very precious part of the world. The work of the 1836 Project Advisory Committee is a catalyst in education, much like an initiative that we have here at West Texas A&M entitled the Hill Institute. And I've given you as a kind of amendments or addendum to my testimony, a document that you can look at that describes what we're doing at the Hill Institute. But I think you'll find a very strong correlation between the legislation that founded the 1836 project and what we're doing at the Hill Institute. The Institute is interesting from my perspective. It's not unlike Civitas and an effort at A&M. It's except in this way, our intention is to only use private funds for the work. And so far, we have $23 million in commitments, and we're continuing to work at that and get to a place where we're adequately funded to carry on the work. And that's all described in this document. In addition, another document that, then I won't likely reference this, but it's called Thoughts from a Conservative Outpost. And it describes West Texas values and why we think they're important to hang on to and why they're still alive here. Normally I would never do this, but this document, it says working draft on the bottom, and it's because it is still a working draft. I've still found typos in it. You got here before the final draft was done, but it's perfectly acceptable for discussion and for your review at some time in the future. Panhandle's a unique place in Texas and on the Great Plains of the United States of America, a vital linchpin of regions, cultures, and ideas. The geography and history of this place and its contribution to the production of food, fuel, and fiber have created a unique mix of values and morals that are responsive to our nation's founding truths and principles. When Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick visited the campus on the occasion of the announcement of a Fairley family gift of $20 million to the Hill Institute, there was much discussion regarding Texas values. Lieutenant Governor Patrick suggested that Panhandle values were indeed Texas values, and in fact, when you get to the depths of them, I may be adding a few words in there, but when you get to the depths of them, they're American values. And he thought it was very important. Many forces have influenced the expression of these values, and we believe if nurtured correctly, the best of these can be carried forward for future generations. For the Hill Institute, these values include things like trust in communities, family and economic prosperity, hard work, regard for others, personal responsibility in a free society, which to me just seems to be evaporating before our very eyes, compatriotism and patriotism, private and civic virtue, faith, loyalty, and rugged individualism. These are the values that every individual in the state of Texas should strive towards. Many folks in West Texas still live by them every day. I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that these values significantly contribute to the Texas GDP. 10% of the Texas economy is driven by production agriculture, and West Texas leads in numerous segments of production agriculture. This sector of the Texas economy shapes who we are in West Texas and our state. To pirate a phrase from Winston Churchill, we shape our economic opportunity, and then our economic opportunity shapes us. This happens as we live a life in a way that sustains us, sustains our communities, our region, and of course, the great state of Texas. It is our job as educators to ensure those values are passed on to those who come after us. These values, under the rubric of patriotic education, included in HB 2497, require the presentation of state and national history and founding principles. This is not just an acknowledgement of the past, important though that may be. Rather, it is a recognition that the future economic prosperity of the state of Texas is in part based on these value systems. These value systems drive a positive economy. An appreciation for the freedoms, their necessary contribution to a constitutional republic in our nation, and in an entrepreneurial state like Texas helps create a positive future. The act proposes to, and I quote, increase awareness of the Texas values that continue to stimulate boundless prosperity across our state. The core curriculum at universities, sometimes called general education requirements, is determined by faculty and legislative leadership. Unfortunately, some see these courses as what students must get out of the way before they really begin to study what's important. General education requirements that survey the human condition, individually and collectively, are the nucleus of being an educated human being in Texas and elsewhere. We need to know our history. At West Texas A&M, a university core curriculum is 42 hours, just as in other universities around the state. Every university in Texas has 6 hours of core courses that must be completed in U.S. history. Typically, one course covers the founding of our nation through post-Civil War Reconstruction, while the second one it covers from the Industrial Revolution to the present day. At WT in the fall of 2019, we had 733 students enrolled in core history requirements. Of those, 87.5% were enrolled in traditional core classes, American History 1 and American History 2. 12.5% were enrolled in specialized history options. By comparison, at the University of Texas in the fall of 2019, 3,911 students were enrolled in various courses to meet their core history requirements. Of those, 62% selected traditional core courses, what we would call the history of the United States of America. Of the balance, 38% opted for 21 different courses providing a narrow, specialized perspective of American history. While those classes as electives may have great value, they may not provide an overview of our state and our nation's evolution and distinctiveness. We think this is critical that these survey courses are taught for all students at WT, and we're moving in that direction. But it's a challenge. My concerns regarding American history also exist in other foundational courses such as history, Texas history, state and local government, guiding aspects of the American experiment, and our state and national fit, place, and purpose in Western civilization. It is evident that American higher education is leaning away from these founding values. Such muting of these values diminishes individual worth, the power of a public university in a free society, and ultimately the foundation of a constitutional republic. Current trends in contemporary communication make ideas palatable, pollute free thought, and limit individual expression. Academic institutions should be a place where ideas can be openly shared. Differences in thinking should be thoughtfully considered, and a deep knowledge of those who came before us should be celebrated. There are those who say the values of the state of Texas, which are outlined in the Hill Institute, point to a form of conservatism embedded in American thought and life. They would be right if, by conservatism, they mean values essential to humans that do not change over time, the spine around which the American idea is wound. Russell Kirk said this, that he believed, the true conservative, felt that there is an enduring moral order. Man was made for the order, and the order was made for man, and went on to say that it's essentially a timeless equation. We forget that at our peril. The galvanizing idea of the 1836 Project and the Hill Institute is to give voice to open discussions of arguably important, timeless, and transcendent values. American exceptionalism, coupled with Texas exceptionalism, records a clear understanding of who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. Too many know too little about the foundations of our Republican form of government. Some know sound bites and captions, and almost nothing else. Informed citizens should have an appreciation for past and present events that are essential to individual, state, and national opportunity. It is my belief that every student should be exposed to a comprehensive and rigorous overview of American history and Texas history, as well as national, state, and local government as the fundamental elements of being an educated human being. I believe it's inarguable, and it is the basis for the representative democracy that we serve and that serves us. A lack of understanding contributes to confusion and misdirection. That is why the Hill Institute and initiatives such as the 1836 Project should and we will reinforce basic tenets essential to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in a free society. At WT, we are working to recognize universities as kettles of opportunity that simmer over hard work, intention, and reward. Commonly held and deeply seated values in support of freedom, opportunity, and healthy families stimulate economies and enterprises of every kind. Our history is the shared thread that creates a fabric of connections and positive relationships for all of us. The study and nurture of the developing values earnestly lived by those who came before will impact the education and training of future engaged, and I would say reflective citizens. The application of value-based thinking will impact the practice and execution of knowledge and insight in the various professions and vocations of life. Whether a member of the next generation chooses to be an educator, an engineer, an agriculturalist, a business entrepreneur, artist, doctor, or nurse, they will be positively marked and practice their vocations differently, and I think more effectively, when they appreciate their history and the shared values of the extended communities that they serve. Confounding for some a strong sense of community and personal grit in harmony is actually the history of Texas. It makes Texans Texans and is forgotten at our peril. I'm thankful for all of you allowing us the opportunity to visit with you and for taking the time to visit the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum. Every student in our state at every level, from preschool to postdoctoral study, should have access to the holdings that are housed here and to the indelible impact they have on our state's future as a beacon of entrepreneurism, exercised personal responsibility, and the power of families and industries working to create a bright future. I'd be pleased to take any questions, hear any comments, or receive any insights. Thanks so much for the opportunity to visit.
Thank you, President Wendler. That was inspiring. Any questions from my fellow committee members?
I have one. Dr. Windler, thank you for being here today. And you talked in your testimony that is evident that the American higher education is leaning away from these founding values that you talked about. Could you expand a little bit on why you think that is and why West Texas A&M is different than most of the universities we're seeing in Texas?
Pleased to. Thanks, Greg. I think, unfortunately, a brief look at the nightly news, almost any outlet or channel, shows us that an awful lot of what goes on college campuses doesn't fit what many people believe is positive educational opportunity. There's just so much of it, and I think universities, even public universities, maybe especially public universities, need to stand up and say, look, this is not productive. These kinds of things, demonstrations, whatever they may be, they can happen in places, but it's not the purpose of a university, public university experience. We are on the public square to some extent, but then again, we're not, because we're charged with the development of curricula and educational experiences for students that lead to a productive future. And I think a lot of what goes on university campus lacks that sort of clarity. It doesn't trumpet these values and aspirations that most taxpayers in the state of Texas have.
Sherry, you got a question?
Yeah, just a couple. Dr. Windler, great to see you. Sorry, miss seeing you in person today, and sorry you have to turn around. A couple of things. What's the timeline on the Hill Institute? Do you have students there now? Are you recruiting? Where are you with that?
Okay, just to reiterate, so everyone hears that question. Sherry asked, what's the timeline on the Hill Institute? Where are we in terms of recruiting students and so on? We have recruited our first and ID'd our first name faculty position, endowed professorship in the Hill Institute. And our goal then is to start to build undergraduate and graduate students into these programs. Part of our challenge is we're working to find a board that really is engaged in these perspectives, which we feel are foundational to a successful institute. So we're taking our time with it. And the major donor is walking with me through this process of identifying potential board members. And we're getting there. We're talking to some people now that we think would be worthy of the power and importance of the idea of this board. So Sherry, to be direct, we're a little slow in the movement, and we're also raising money. We're continuing to raise money. We're going to need a lot of money before this. And this pronouncement that this would not use public funds is helpful to us because we believe it gives us more liberty. It's in a sense an island of sort of, I'll call it free enterprise within the public University of West Texas A&M. I don't even know if we need it here, but I know some of the larger institutions that are more universalist in their view. I'll use the University of Texas. I'm not going to use my alma mater, but I probably could. But I'll use the University of Texas. It's a challenge. I mean, people want to argue about these things and they don't think they're appropriate. And I personally am not afraid to argue about them and present them and think they're completely appropriate. And not only that, they're our calling and our responsibility and our goal, which is implied in committee member Sylvester's question, is to get more students engaged. And we want undergraduate students and graduate students engaged in working with faculty members on various aspects of research. The first faculty member we have is someone that looks at the purpose and power of family life in sustaining communities, which I think is very important. And it's a subject, and she takes it from what I would call a traditional perspective. And I think that's important, and I believe it deeply in my soul that it really is important. Sherry, I hope
Just
that's
a-
helpful.
That's great. Just a couple of quick follow-ups. Will you be giving us a copy of your testimony so we've got that? And also, is the data that you quoted from comparing the people taking survey courses at UT and West T, is that easily available? And if not, can we talk offline about how you get that? Because I'd like to look at that some more.
Okay, and I appreciate that, Sherry. We got it. I had a student worker call the registrar's office both here and at the University of Texas, and I was surprised how willing and forthright they were. And they had no idea why we wanted the data, but and I'm not looking to do anything untoward with it, but just to be factual. My concern is that there is a growing trend on university campuses for faculty to want to teach courses that they would like to teach in their area of specialization. And unfortunately, I can give you some examples from our own. And then because faculty control the curriculum, they're willing to make substitutions and so on and so forth. And I can get you the numbers, and as a matter of fact, I'd be glad to get you the numbers, Sherry, that I've got a spreadsheet with all this on it that we got from the registrar's office at both institutions here and then the University of Texas.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
That it for you, Sherry?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Sherry. Good to see you, even if it's on TV.
I'm just amazed that I heard Russell Kirk in this space. That's pretty remarkable. One of the things that I've been challenged with, so I'm a creature of higher education. I've been in the history business in higher education for 26, well, now actually 30 years. And one of the things that increasingly became difficult was where to advise my undergraduates to go for graduate school. I mean, it was tough. And I'm glad to hear about this initiative up here in Canyon.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And I do think for many people, this will be a good fit. For others, maybe not.
Sure.
But where is it written that all public universities need to be the same? I think distinctiveness is exceedingly important, especially in Texas. I think it's just very important.
It's a big place, as we covered earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really big place. Any questions here? Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your words, and thank you for
Will this
spending
go
time with us.
into the permanent record, I assume?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
All these will be exhibits that will accompany this testimony.
I'll just say, Dr. Windler, this testimony make a pretty good op-ed.
Yeah, it makes a great op-ed.
Well, I'm going to
That's
tell
where
you.
my head always is.
When you look at this thoughts from a conservative outpost, it'll curl your hair, some of it. I mean, it's pretty pointed and pretty direct.
Well, you've
But I
got a
think-
responsibility in your position to be the leader, and that's what it looks like.
Tip O'Neill was right when he said all politics is local, and I can turn that phrase to say that all higher education can be local too. And I think effective universities always represent the regions they're from first. And for some, like a regional university like ours, that's the most important thing to do. It's different with a major international research university, but we know who we are and value that opportunity.
It's the old town gown relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank,
I just had a quick question.
oh,
You mentioned, thought this was a great point about what you see on the news, coverage about universities and what's going on. Which just, the opposite side of that is that a lot of universities that have the values that you talked about, which I think really are probably a majority of the small universities have those values, are not telling their story, or they're not covering their story. So I think that's a great point.
I agree with you. I think we should be bold and forthright about what our value systems are, just like some of the major research institutions in our nation.
Well, it's misleading what's really going on in our
is.
education
I
in
would
many
agree with
ways.
I would agree with you.
there being no further questions, thank you, President Wendler,
Thank
for
you.
coming out. All right, moving ahead with the agenda. I'd like to now call Dr. Andrew Hay with the Cultural Foundation of the Texas Panhandle to present to the committee. Dr. Hay, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Frazier. Thank you all for gathering here at the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum today. I'm the Executive Director of the Cultural Foundation of the Texas Panhandle, the Texas Panhandle Heritage Foundation, and the Panhandle Plains Historical Society and Museum. So lots of acronyms to be thrown in there, but today I'm here on behalf of the Panhandle Plains Historical Society and Museum. And again, thank you for being in the Education Credit Union History Studio, which feels appropriate for our time. Just a bit of a history of this museum, if you'll indulge me. It really is, I think, a history that speaks to the people in this place, this part of the world, and it speaks to how this institution preserves and promotes Texas history. Back in 1910, a young man by the name of J.A. Hill, he was the second president of West Texas A&M, took a train from Lubbock to Canyon and got off the train and said, kind of like we just heard, what the heck did I just do? But he was, of course, a history professor and knew the history of this part of the world and really wanted to start preserving that history, starting to talk to people and gather effects from this part of the world. And so he traded an insurance policy actually for a small collection that he housed at the original administration building on West Texas Normal College, what it was known at that point. Unfortunately, in 1914, that collection burned down with the administration building. So in a way, the first collection of this part of the world was lost. But there was a young professor named Hattie Anderson that got together with a lot of other professors at the university and President J.A. Hill, a lot of community members in Canyon and Amarillo and the surrounding communities, and they started something and incorporated something called the Panhandle Plains Historical Society in 1921, so just over 103 years ago. They started gathering artifacts from families, from collectors, direct from sources, on the account that they saw a way of life passing away. There were old timers like Charles Goodnight, who was getting on in years, and they felt if we want to preserve these stories and these artifacts, we need to get together and really start to form something, a club of sorts. Some of the first items that they did receive was from Charles Goodnight, which is pretty spectacular, and we do have those items still today. But in collecting that passing away of life, it became pretty clear that they needed a place to house them. But upon incorporation of the Panhandle Plains Historical Society, they aimed at roughly 6 things, which I like to keep in mind. They wanted a clear vision of opportunities. They wanted a strong conviction that they're serving the public. They wanted devotion to overcoming challenges. They wanted a cooperative spirit in teaching the history of this part of the world. They wanted to have an annual fellowship where you get together and eat. And then they wanted sound and aggressive leadership. Given that, in 1933, the Society built the Pioneer Hall, which is still part of the museum today, a very special building that sits on the corner of West Texas A&M University's campus. It was $50,000, Half of that money was raised by the society, and the other half was the state of Texas. And the agreement was, you can do business here, but it seems the coordinating board has oversight of the building itself. And so since then, for 90-plus years, the society has been doing business as Panhandle Plains Historical Museum, roughly in the same location, although the museum has certainly expanded. Between 1933 and the mid-'80s, it added 4 more buildings to the entire structure. The important thing about Pioneer Hall, though, is it really displays and shows the importance of the museum and what it means to a community and a state and a nation. You'll see little motifs as you walk through that building that have sunbursts. And the society said this represents the light of knowledge, that eternal light of knowledge, that people will come into this building, gain that knowledge, and take it out into the world, which is something that is of the flavor of the museum even today. This is a teaching museum. It always has been a teaching museum. What is a collection if it's always hidden? Using a collection to promote a certain interpretation that guests can take and then ruminate on and hopefully change their lives as they encounter the genuine article and the stories of this part of the world and the nation. So the society at present operates a 200,000 plus square foot museum with 2.5 million items in its collection and 30 plus employees, including students from the university as well. So it's a lot to hang on to sometimes, but it's a wonderful, wonderful job, and I work with great people. The collection itself, as some of you already know, you've been here before, but the collection itself is not just, I guess everything's historical, but it's not your typical brand of historical museum. It's very much an encyclopedic museum or a kaleidoscopic museum more than anything. We have a vast paleontology collection, mainly from the results of the WPA work down here at Paladuro Canyon or Cedar Canyon and elsewhere, where rare specimens were unearthed and we still have in our collection and on display. Geology, archaeology, incredible native ethnological items, probably the largest and best collection of Comanche artifacts in the world. We have Western heritage, of course, what we would think of individuals that came at the closing of the Old West and now to the Wild West, ranching, oil and gas industry, that spectacular moment when ranching all of a sudden figured out it has oil and gas. Now what do? Well, we run cattle. Weapons of the Army of the West, and material effects of the Army of the West as the clash of cultures in the late 19th century happened in this part of the world, cataclysmically at the Second Battle of Adobe Walls, which just commemorated 150 years ago last Thursday, which the museum oversees that site and several others. Unknown really to the public sometimes as tourists come through here and step into Pioneer Hall to see the museum is we also have an incredible scientific collection, an incredible art collection, fine art collection that is the result of incredibly generous families in this part of the world supporting the Taos and Santa Fe schools. So it's a very encyclopedic place, to say the least. Also, sometimes people forget we have archives. We have a 10,000 square foot archive at Panhandle Plains Historical Museum with thousands of square linear feet. It is perhaps the most personal part of our collection in some ways. I'm completely biased. I think this is the greatest collection of any museum in the nation, and I know the Louvre would roll its eyes, and AMNH in New York would too, but I think I find it as not being a native of this part of the world, but having the absolute honor to oversee a collection of this historical magnitude, I now know it's part of my history and my kids' history, my wife's history. And so it's very personal, I think, above all else. And those archives with interviews and textual history is an incredible record of what it took for people to live here and what it takes for people to continue to live here. We never stop collecting. I think that's one kind of misnomer about the museum business is, oh, you got this collection, great, dust it off on the shelf. It's a very active museum in continuing to collect and catalog a way of life in 2024 as well. But the archives are filled with interviews, photos, folios, exceptional items ranging from medieval era up to the present. We host people like S.C. Gwynn to do his research on topics. We just had Ken Burns and his team to do research for a third time for his programming. We have researchers from every known top university, not only in the nation, but the world, that come here on a regular basis, not only in the archives, but also archaeology and elsewhere. It's very unknown to the public. That's not something we obviously advertise, but the researchers that come through here go on to do incredible things in print. And of course, we get to host the incredible faculty and students of West Texas A&M University, not only in archives, but many of the curricula at WT use this museum for those three-dimensional, two-dimensional objects that really speak into the subject that they're teaching about. And as you all know from your schooling, there's nothing like seeing the white glove moment where you can see the actual artifact that represents a time period or a person on display. So preserving a record at Panhandle Plains Historical Museum is important because it promotes in some way civic well-being and also curricular effects. The exhibits here, as I took some of you on a tour, and thank you for, I'm sure your legs are hurting right now. We ran, we were really quick. Sorry I bossed you along in a few places. But as you see in the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum, our exhibits range from, of course, what you would expect, Western heritage, native ethnological items, but we just have a bison exhibit talking about the passing of the West with the species of a bison and also the reservation period, and then current conservation efforts. We are happy to work with a lot of people, notably Ted Turner's ranches. We have people in the plains that give a good cross-section of this part of the world. We have automobiles talking about Route 66. Of course, a vast petroleum exhibit talks about the industry and the effects of that. And also art. We were able to host Texas State Park Centennial exhibit that started at the Bullock Museum in Austin and ended here. So we bookended with that, which was great. We also lend a lot of items out. Sometimes, again, that's not known to the public. We just like being an institution that loans items to other institutions across the nation and world, especially in our art portion. We are part of an embassy scheme, and we send art to all the U.S. embassies around the world. We get to supply the Bullock Historical Museum in Austin from time to time, which is great with our artifacts, and also many, many institutions in between, not only in Texas, but around the nation, get a lot of our effects, not just the art, but also certain items as well. We're AAM accredited, which, if you don't know that in the museum world, is kind of the seal of approval. It's a national approval. If you're approved every 15 years, which is the equivalent of a frontal lobotomy sometimes, they make you do a lot to be accredited, but it's the same accreditation that the Smithsonian, AMNH, and other top institutions have. There's only 900 in the nation that are accredited, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum is one of them, which means we get traveling exhibit, means we have to keep up with certain ethical standards of collection care, which we do so gladly. I think, though, I'd like to key in at the end, though, a bit on what I find to be really the center of the museum, and that's our educational programming. So we take pride in being a museum. We take pride in collection care. We take pride in honoring the people that have given to this institution. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that the society and the museum is most proud about is how we impact K through 12 education. This is an isolated region. This is a region that does not have certain outlets that other metropolitan areas have. There isn't another museum across the street, which I think is good. That's good for me. But that also means we have to be all things to all people. This isn't just a museum. It's also a place that supplements the ISDs in this part of the world that desperately need that supplement in their curriculum, and especially in the historical area, but really also in the scientific area. We serve over 70 ISDs in this part of the world. It's not just the Panhandle of Texas or into West Texas. It's also New Mexico, Southern Colorado, and Oklahoma that we serve as well. Speaking to a principal from Channing, Texas, which is about an hour and a half away or so. And they get one field trip a year, and they choose this museum because they know it gives them the greatest breadth of ability to say, see, this is what we've been teaching you all this year, and here's the real deal. And our educators, our staff, our education staff at the museum is second to none. Absolutely incredible in working with the principals, superintendents, teachers to say, what do you need from us when your kids come here to really have an impactful time? So not only do they get access to all the museum has to offer for public, but also we have a planetarium, we have an inflatable planetarium, we have a STEAM lab where kids come into the room in which we're gathered right now. They will learn about something, they'll go next door and get to do hands-on experiments before then they can go off into the museum and have a great time in the exhibits. We're always looking to grow that over and over again. We're thinking of new ways, not only that people are coming here, but because we live in an isolated region, we also have our educators going to schools as well with that portable planetarium and other programs. And so it's a very important part of this museum. It's actually the thing in which the museum was founded, teaching. How do we get in front of the future of this part of the world? How do we not only concern ourselves with history makers, but future history makers? That's what this museum's in the business of at the end of the day. So we go to the schools, we have a great time. We see about 10% of the population, K through 12, comes here on an annual basis, and that continues to grow 25, 30% year on year. So we're reaching a ceiling, hopefully, that we can break through very soon. Real quick, I'd just like to end my time just by talking about the future of this museum a little bit, at least from my perspective, and some current developments that could be very beneficial for this institution. As far as education, we have been in talks with the Challenger Learning Center. This is a nonprofit that was formed after the Challenger shuttle disaster. And as we have a Rick Husband who passed away tragically on the Columbia disaster, we have been talking to this group where they actually work with NASA and come in and build an immersive center in which kids, primarily 5th to 8th grade is kind of the bread and butter, but they come in and they learn how to work together as a team as though they're going to Mars. So they're programs that are immersive where you're on a space station. There's another group that's in the Houston Command Center, and they'll talk through how to solve issues. And we find that utterly fascinating to impact K through 12 in this part of the world, because the time is meant to not only teach them about how to work together and do science and outer space, but at the end of it, they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this is a really exceptional way to start talking to them about, hey, if you're interested in STEM education, there's a university right across campus here that you need to go to. So that's one part that we're really looking into to kind of complete our portion of educational programming. We're across all frontiers, right? And one of those is kind of the last frontier, space. We're going to continue to ramp up more travel to schools for educators. We want to continue to augment programming for educational services here, and really, all of our programs are in compliance with TEAC standards, so that's important to us that every 5th grader, I believe, has to go to a cultural center in the state of Texas, and we're wonderful beneficiaries of that, and we want to make the most of it. We're also looking into paleontology renovation. We want to expand that. The story of the High Plains and paleontology is fascinating, utterly fascinating. And we're the ones that have every species that's been found around here. We not only have the collection from Panhandle Plains Historical Museum, but we hold in trust anything found on state land and national land around here. It comes to this museum, and we're grateful to steward those as well. So we have an exceptional story to tell when it comes to paleontology as well. And then finally, the building itself. If Dr. Windler were here, he would tell you that the Texas A&M University system, as they own the building, it's an asset on the A&M system, has deployed some funds, at least for a planning phase, to see if could there be a new building, renovated building. So feasibility study is currently being conducted on this building to see what its future would be and what that would do for an entire region and state if we could have a building that is perhaps more flexible, the ability to meet the demands not only of people around this place, but tourists to the region as well, to display the incredible history of this part of the world. So with that said, we take great pride to export Texas history. with all its material effects that have come from here, but also around the globe as well. We can tell a global story, but really our bread and butter is Texas and particularly Panhandle history. And I appreciate the committee's time for this, and of course would encourage any questions and comments you might have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the hospitality again. Any questions for the speaker? Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how you integrate the museum into the life of the university, into the campus life and those kind of things. I came from a museum that was a part of Sam Houston State, and every day you hear students say, I never went over there to that museum.
Right,
So
right.
I'm very curious in that.
Yeah, thank you. Other than kind of the mundane that students and faculty are free, which isn't mundane, we have, the numbers keep growing, thankfully, of students and faculty coming here. Really, it's probably in curricular. So we have great relationships, of course, with every department, but kind of our closest relationships with the university are through the history department and the fine arts department. So we have a lecture room upstairs in the museum that's called the Hazelwood Lecture Room after Senator Hazelwood, who helped this museum a lot. And we have classes in there during the semester pretty much every day. And then the professors are very good at using objects or having their art students go out and draw in the galleries. And so there's that kind of organic piece to it. Also, I'm a West Texas A&M University employee, and so is everybody in this museum. And so we're able to be in front of faculty and staff and VPs and the president and really advocate for this museum and talk about what partnerships might be forged in programming and exhibits, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a very healthy relationship. It's been since day one, being on this campus. I believe it was the second president that gave the land for Pioneer Hall to be built. So there's always been a precedent set that we try to continue as much as we can, and we've got a few ideas of how we could partner in a deeper way. But really, for me, it's seeing faculty and students in here is an incredible luxury. And then we hire students. We hire a good 20 students throughout the year to help us maintain this incredible place. And so we rely heavily on the university. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Carolina.
I was curious about your archives.
Yes.
Are they from the whole Panhandle area, or are they time-wise? Obviously, if you're going all the way back to the
Right.
paleontology, you're going way back
Right.
time-wise. But is it also an archive that covers material that students from, say, Lubbock can come down and use, that students from Sweetwater can come up and use?
Yes. Actually, we have quite often, being that Texas Tech is down the road, we have a lot of professors and students from Texas Tech that come here and use the archives. They've got a great Southwest collection down in Tech, and so it's a great place, but we have different items that they may need to consult on. And so, yes, it is open for, if we're talking about the paper, the textual and oral archives,
Well,
or we're talking about
that's
this?
what I'm wondering. What is, obviously, it seems to be a vast
Yes.
variety of materials.
It is. I'd say the heart and soul of it, if we're talking about the paper archives, is predominantly going to be 25,000 square mile radius that we serve in the Panhandle. So the top 26 counties of Texas. It would probably be, it's predominantly that, but it is very global. We have an autograph collection that, again, spans 14th century to present, or letters as well. It's called Lowenstern Archive. And so there'll be surprises like that become very global very quickly. And I would say researchers and students, you'll find something that you're interested in or
So
looking
it's-
for.
It's not just paper documents, but it's also physical
It'll be interviews,
items?
photos.
Oh, interviews. Oh, okay.
Digital aspects as well, digital pieces to the, which is becoming more prominent now. We're rapidly digitizing everything, but we're also receiving just digitized items to go into the archives to collect a part of the history of life now.
So are we talking Coronado's helmet from Kansas or something? Or
If you're talking about the historical items, it will range typically, if you take paleontology out of that, because we're talking millions, the past 15,000 years of life in this part of the world predominantly, but also globally. We have items from all over the world. But again, the heart and soul would be, the Conquistador, up through Pastores, and then Kiowa, Comanche, Cheyenne, Apache, Arapaho, the Great Plains tribes,
Right.
and then ranching life, and then it continues on from there with industry and oil and gas and beyond. So it is wonderful and terrifying, right?
Yes,
It's a
it
lot to
is,
take
I'm
care
sure.
of, but I
I'm sure.
I work with incredible experts.
But you obviously must have good indexing and good,
Yes,
finding sources.
cataloging system is great. Yeah.
online.
Yeah, we actually just changed our cataloging system so we can rapidly digitize and put it online for public consumption. It's already there, but we're trying to get more user-friendly
Right.
on that. So it's a great adventure, but we take great pride in it.
A lot of effort.
Yes, ma'am.
Good job.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Last week I was in DC with my daughter and spent a lot of time at many Smithsonians and Mount Vernon and other things. This museum is remarkable. So congratulations to you and the staff. And it's not just remarkable for Canyon, Texas, and the Panhandle is remarkable for America and for Texas. So
Thank you.
I hope everyone, if anyone watches, I don't know how many people watch this. Our views are probably in the maybe dozens. But
That's okay.
But if anyone watching, they should come up here and see it because I really enjoyed and appreciated the tour earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to have them.
Yeah.
Come on up. Thank you.
Any home movies or videos in those vaults of yours?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's all that, everything.
That's great.
Everything.
Sherry, did you have anything you wanted to ask? You're muted.
I got nothing else but great testimony. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a world-class museum. I mean, and it's always been one of my faves, and I think it's important that when Texas decided to celebrate 100 years of its independence, part of what they spent their money on was this facility.
You're right.
And I don't think that was by accident. So
No.
I'm glad to know that this is in good hands.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, there being no other questions, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, would like to call Dr. Shannon Trejo with the Texas Education Agency, and she'll be presenting online.
Good afternoon, Chair Frazier, members of the committee. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present to you this morning. Actually, super excited to follow Dr. Hay, especially related to the Cultural Foundation of Texas Panhandle Museum. I think the information you're going to see today will definitely show an effort that the Texas Education Agency is making to ensure that students have opportunities to learn a ton about the state of Texas based on our new curriculum. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen if that's okay. Can you see the screen with my name on it?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Dr. Shannon Trejo. I am the Deputy Commissioner of School Programs, excited to be a part of the Texas Education Agency and to present to you this morning about our latest and greatest curriculum project that we have been working on as a part of House Bill 1605. Wanted to get started with kind of the why behind this project matters. As indicated by the previous testimony, all of us are focused on what we can do to increase student outcomes, including reading proficiency. This particular graph does show a correlation between economics and grade level proficiency in reading. Yes.
Dr. Trejo, let me stop you for just a second. We're having a minor hiccup on the technology.
No
We
problem.
had you for a second and then we didn't. Yeah, we'll take a 2-minute recess while we work this out.
Thank you.
We are going to reconvene. Just like he's in there. Yeah.
We may be sorry you got that.
That's right. Dr. Trejo, we are back and we see your slides. If you would like to roll it back one, or we're actually on your first slide. Yep, that's you. All right, so we're good.
Thank you so much. Sorry about the snafus with technology there. So as I was saying, there is a direct correlation between economics and reading proficiency, which through the research, we have found that the focus on 4 aspects of curriculum design and the type of curriculum we're putting in front of students in the state of Texas does matter. These 4 things can have an impact on increasing reading achievement, as listed there. So why does this matter for us? We know that if kids are able to decode words, think phonics, they're able to understand how sounds and symbols go together. And there is explicit instruction happening on phonics in the classroom. And then we multiply that by language comprehension, which is the ability to know words, complex words, over a body of knowledge that they learn over time at the elementary level. And they combine that with writing, that we will get to reading comprehension, which is what we want to see. And in our new curriculum, we particularly want to highlight how learning about Texas history is a big part of this language comprehension and knowledge coherence strand. We know that reading coherence means that we're going to learn a few topics in each grade level. And as we get older and able to really get into the complexity of the text and the complexity of the history and understand the people and events, we know that students will be able to retain that information in the long term and be able to recall that information while reading new and what we call cold reads on state assessments. It just so happens that social studies particularly is one of the places that we can have a clear and positive, statistically significant effect on reading improvement. We know that when kids have background knowledge, they are actually able to do better. This was a recent study conducted on a passage about baseball. And we found that kids who obviously have a high reading ability and also a lot of knowledge about baseball do quite well. But if you look at the next bar graph down, you can see that kiddos that do struggle in reading but have high knowledge coherence about baseball can actually do really well as well. This was an example that was provided out by RECT in some of the research there. And what we're hoping to do is create more opportunities for students to learn about Texas and Texas history so that this coherence can be built across time for our youngest readers. This can also have an impact on closing achievement gaps between our different student groups. So not only does this potentially have the impact on low-income students that I showed you about in the original graph, it can also assist with closing the gaps for our different student groups. And this can be seen in this particular example. So I want to give you an idea about how this knowledge coherence works. There's a unit in kindergarten called the Five Senses, where students actually study about what are the five senses. They learn about it through a great poem, and they recognize sight as being a key sense that we need in order to be able to function in life. In first grade, they go on to learn about what's the eye made of. For a 6-year-old, it's a squishy piece of viscous material. It actually functions as part of a bigger system, the human body. It helps protect us by blinking and by creating tears. And then they go on into second grade to show that this is actually part of building blocks in nutrition. We've got to take care of our eyes, and that these systems within the body can be compared to other systems like a microscope or even a magnifying glass. And then on in third grade, we get into the really technical vocabulary about retina and how the eye actually functions in diagramming. So you could see kindergarten all the way through third grade, this knowledge coherence can play an important role in how students walk out of elementary school and are better prepared for what's coming. We've seen that in the likes of Lubbock ISD, who has been piloting these materials over the past couple of years and has seen tremendous results from 2019 to 2024. And you can see the positive changes, not only on the grade level outcomes, but also between student groups, as I mentioned before. House Bill 1605 gave us a great opportunity to create state-based curriculum. Out of this opportunity, we have created a product called the Open Education Resource in grades K through 5 for reading language arts. And this actual opportunity allows us, TEA, to act as a publisher. We publish this curriculum that is then vetted by the State Board of Education and requires that this vetting process go through a rigorous examination by reviewers on these criteria. Particularly, I want to highlight the idea of quality review and suitability review so that we are showing the highest quality materials are coming out of that review process and getting into the hands of teachers and students. The timeline for this particular opportunity, along with many other sets that are going before the State Board of Education for consideration, is as follows. And we do anticipate that in November of 2024, a final list, which we hope OER will be on that list, will be approved for use in classrooms. That website here listed actually gives you an opportunity to get online and take a look at these materials. I'll have it again later in the presentation in case you aren't able to get it down now, but sboe.texas.gov/IMRA will help you gain access to the materials themselves. We do want to highlight that the selection of local materials is inherently up to the local education agency. As stated before with Dr. Hay, we do know that the community voice is a very important role in selecting educational materials, and that these materials will continue to be optional as each community can select them for their stakeholders. So let's talk a little bit about what does Texas history have to do with this curriculum? This is actually a map of all of the subjects, units that are included in the RLA, or Reading Language Arts curriculum for the Open Education Resource System. You can see that there are 11 units in kindergarten. Those are the various titles of the unit. Each unit represents about 3 weeks of instruction, and it goes over 165 days for the entirety of that grade level instruction. Across this whole product, almost half of this product actually has units with Texas references to help build background knowledge around Texas and our really rich history. For example, in kindergarten, there are references in Serving Our Neighbors that talk about the Texas Good Samaritan Law. We have references to the Dallas Fire PD and Houston PD in grade K Serving Our Neighbors as community service agents. We have the origins of the Six Flags over Texas in kindergarten, where we're actually starting in kindergarten with colonial America and Native Americans there. So super excited about that. We also talk about the many Texas military bases in kindergarten in Serving Our Neighbors as well. In first grade, we do have references to NASA in the astronomy and space explorations. You'll also see in grade 2 references to Pecos Bill and Tall Tales. You'll see Bessie Coleman highlighted, and I'm about to show you an excerpt from the curriculum, highlighted in grade 2, flight and aviation. We have A New Life in Texas that gives a wonderful story about immigration to Texas and land of opportunity. Going on into 3rd grade, we have some great stories about Scott Joplin and Dr. James Polk, highlighting great Texans and what they have done to contribute to music in Texas. In grade 4, we have personal narratives around lessons I learned on the cattle drive and a specific highlight around Clara Driscoll. And then on into 5th grade, we do have additional lessons, particularly in World War II and in Juneteenth, that highlight great Texans who were a part of that military feat in World War II and Juneteenth, with the adoption of Juneteenth as a Texas state holiday. So many, many, many opportunities throughout these different units to highlight Texas history. And so I want to show you a few examples. There's that visit sboe.texas.gov. I would certainly suggest, if you have an opportunity to go in and take a look at some of these units, I think you would be really pleased to see the references that are included. Let's start with Fighting for a Cause. That highlights Dr. Hector P. Garcia, obviously born in Mexico, but moved to Texas, a medical doctor, obviously an education advocate, really hoping to impact how education is brought to students in Texas, as well as highlighting his service in World War II. All That Jazz, as I mentioned before, highlights Dr. James Polk, who's from Corpus Christi. As a musician who had multiple talents with many instruments, he attended college in Austin and partnered with Ray Charles to share a love of the blues. He's also been inducted into the Austin Music Hall of Fame. And as I now live in Austin, I spend some time listening to some great music from blues these days. In kindergarten, I mentioned Serving Our Neighbors has several opportunities to highlight Texas history, including that focus on community localization and putting Texas on the map, with this particular example as military as a support for our community. We also have in grade 4, the reference to Lessons I Learned on a Cattle Drive. This is an amazing historical narrative about growing up in the cattle drive and participating in that. It's noted here that Bessie Coleman was a part of the Daughters of the Republic, is obviously recognized and honored for her dedication to Texas history, particularly around the Alamo and her work with saving the Alamo through her philanthropic efforts. And then, of course, in grade 5, I'm going to touch back on World War II, where Dr. Garcia is also highlighted as a participant in World War II, a great Texan who represented us well during that military feat. We have the Flight and Story of Aviation with Bessie Coleman, particularly. This born in Atlanta, Texas, female aviator who is a top barnstormer in the US. Actually great to see a female out there in Texas and representing these great pieces of our history. And then, of course, in grade 3, there's a highlight around many missions that were put in place between 1682 and 1793 in Texas, including the Alamo, the Mission of San Juan, Mission Espada, Mission Concepcion, all near the San Antonio River, that supported Native American integration into mission community. And of course, America, our great country, helps students learn about the Texas Pledge, the Texas Capitol, and understanding the Texas flags. And it's a great way to start off that integration into Texas history at the kindergarten level and build upon that over time, all the way up through 5th grade. So a quick and expeditious report to the committee, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Trejo. I find it interesting that we are now going to be interlocking reading language arts with throwing some history in there as well. This is a positive trend if we're talking about Texas more often than not. Any questions from the committee? Carolina?
Hello, Dr. Trejo. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Are these materials then just available to the teachers, or are they required to use them, or are they, it's their choice to use them? Are these books? Are they part of the TEKS? How are they offered to the teachers?
Great question. Thank you for that. So these materials are actually going through the vetting process that I mentioned earlier with the State Board of Education. They are online and available to the public, and once approved by the state board, they will be eligible for additional incentive funding that's been exercised out of House Bill 1605. However, I want to note that these materials are free. So the costs associated with them are related to printing costs, and districts can adopt these materials and utilize that incentivized funding to actually print the materials and provide them to their teachers in the classrooms. These are optional materials for school districts to utilize, as I stated earlier, so there still is local authority to adopt and utilize these in the classroom.
Are they like pamphlets? Are they?
No, no, ma'am, they're full curricular materials. They are textbooks, activity books, large, picture books. There's some trade books included. So it is like going into a classroom and having a full set of curricular materials available for teachers and students to utilize day by day.
Let me get you to quit showing or sharing your screen, because it's a disembodied voice and it's throwing me.
There we go.
making me crazy.
That better?
There you are. So let me recap what I just heard then. So these are going to be high-quality, top-flight, this is going to be high-quality curricula, top-flight, pretty, engaging, useful, and
Absolutely.
essentially paid for by the taxpayers of Texas and made available free of charge to school districts that may want to use this, as opposed to, say, a curriculum that they're buying from a national educational publisher, correct? So this is
I couldn't
maybe
have
an
said it better
alternative.
myself.
Yeah, so it's an alternative to Pearson and the rest of that stuff. So that's cool. So if you're out in Roby and you've got a limited curricular budget, well, the state of Texas, the people of Texas is making this material available for your classroom use.
That's correct.
Okay, so I got that straight.
So the teachers then are the ones who choose what to offer?
Typically, a district would adopt a set of materials. So it's typically done at the district level. And then the district is able to better support teachers in receiving the training that they might need or any additional resources. So most often it's a district level decision, and then the district's able to grab those materials and make them widely available to any teacher in the district. However, these materials, again, will be available publicly. So any teacher would be able to pull them down, take a look and utilize them in the classroom.
So are the teachers offered training during the summer in this material?
Yes, ma'am. The materials are accompanied by training support as part of House Bill 1605, and we are excited to get started on that process pending State Board of Education approval.
And then how do they relate to the TEKS?
They are 100% coverage of the TEKS. Now, keep in mind, as stated before by Chair Frazier, this is actually a reading language arts curriculum. So it's exciting to see social studies content being put into the reading language arts curriculum, but the TEKS that are 100% covered here are RLA TEKS, reading language arts TEKS, and we get the benefit of double dipping, so to speak, into our social studies TEKS as part of the reading language arts curriculum.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. You showed the improvement from Lubbock, I think it was Lubbock ISD, and they've been using this. Can you talk about, are there other districts that have already started piloting this, and have you seen similar results in those districts as well?
We do have a variety of districts that have been piloting previous materials over the past several years, some of them in a classroom, some of them more widely. We have seen Lubbock ISD particularly come forward. Temple ISD has also shown some really positive results. And with the new STAR data in, we're obviously analyzing the most recent data to look for highlights on how these materials are impacting student results.
Great. And then you said the SBOE is reviewing those. There was just a meeting last week. Was that part of the, last week's meeting, or is that part of a future meeting? I know you showed it briefly, but I couldn't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, great question. The EMERA reviewers are actually in process right now. And that review process will go through August 16th. That will include a public comment period, and then the board will come back in September where they will receive a report on what all was found around quality, suitability, all of those criteria that I showed you. And then in November, they'll have a little bit of time to study those reports, and then in November, they will take a final vote on which products they're approving off of that list. And the Open Education Resource from Texas is one of the products that they're taking a look at.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Trejo.
Of course.
Any other questions? Sherry, you got anything? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
I think
so much.
they're going to accidentally learn a little history as they're going through their reading assignments. That doesn't break my heart at all. All right, I appreciate
win.
your testimony. Thanks for coming, swinging by virtually. Okay. Next, I'm going to call Mr. Jim Brett Campbell with the National Ranching Heritage Center to present to the committee about the great things going on down in Lubbock.
No, thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the committee for having us here. My name is Jim Brett Campbell. I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the National Ranching Heritage Center and the Ranching Heritage Association, which has actually 1,700 members in 44 states. So we have tremendous national support. But the National Ranching Heritage Center is a museum and historical park located on the Texas Tech University campus in Lubbock, Texas. We have a 44,000 square foot main museum building with 7 galleries where we tell the story of ranching. While we have national in our name, obviously our roots are in Texas, and you can't tell the story of ranching without beginning here in Texas and beginning to tell the story. Our mission is to preserve and interpret the history of ranching in North America and to address contemporary ranching issues. We do that primarily. The crown jewel of our collection are 55 historic ranching structures that have been moved, restored, and maintained as they would have been during their original time periods on our historical park, which has 19 acres, 1.5 miles of hard surface walkways that enable people to step back into another time and place and learn how the folks in our industry or our era in this part of the world lived and survived and thrived and developed the culture and values that we're all talking about today. And so in addition to preserving architecture and artifacts and those ways of life, we also strive to preserve the culture and history that perpetuates our way of life going forward. So the National Ranching Heritage Center, to give you a little bit of background, was first envisioned in the mid-1960s. Dr. Grover Murray was president of Texas Tech University. He made a lot of things happen at Texas Tech, including the law school and the museum next door to us, but he saw an outdoor museum in Norway, of all places. He brought that concept back to West Texas and said, we need to preserve our Western and ranching heritage in that same way. It actually was going to be part of a much larger complex. There would have been, because it was going to be semi-arid studies of the world. And there would have been an African section, an Asian section, South American. But it was the North American, West Texas piece of it that took off because he recruited the ranching industry to come alongside him. And so for more than 50 years now, the National Ranching Heritage Center has been a passion project for the ranching industry. So the folks you see on the slide in front of you, Dee Burns was the longtime manager of the Pitchfork Ranch. John Lott was heir to the Slaughter Ranches, and in fact, his grandson is president of the Ranching Heritage Association today. So we have multiple generations of folks that continue to pour their time, sweat, and tears into the Ranching Heritage Center. Frank Chappell was one of the owners of the Spade Ranches that continue to be involved in this as well. And then Bob Snyder owned the television and radio stations in town. So they got the word out about this amazing new facility that was being built in Lubbock. And so that's really how it came to be. In 1974, they had installed 11 structures beginning at that time. They had actually, one of the things, if you visit the Ranching Heritage Center, that we do have berms that give us a little bit of topography on what was once just flat cotton land on the north side of the Tech campus, and those were built by the Army Corps of Engineers. But when you turn the page, you'll see what we look like today. And I always send a drone out after we've had some rain and we're actually green. So, although this year has been a good year. So, but we preserve stories. And we preserve stories originally, as I mentioned, through architecture. This is the 80 John Wallace House, and 80 John Wallace was one of the most famous black ranchers in Texas. In fact, he was just installed into the Hall of Great Westerners at the the National Cowboy Hall of Fame and Western Heritage Center in Oklahoma City. But his home was just falling down on the north side of a cotton field. Without us going in and restoring that structure and preserving his story, certainly that architecture and that building would have been lost to time. And so we've moved it to the National Ranching Heritage Center. We restore it, we maintain it. In fact, I was going through and we're due for replacing some of the textile materials because these things are subjected to West Texas heat and dryness and dirt, and so they do have to be replaced periodically. In ways that we tell the story, we have an amazing set of volunteers. We call them ranch hosts. They actually have been in existence as long as the Ranching Heritage Association. We have about 150 of them, many of whom enjoy dressing up in period clothing and doing living history. In 2023, they had over 1,300 volunteer sessions with more than 11,000 hours donated to telling our story. But if you visit the National Ranching Heritage Center on most Saturdays between May and October, you'll find about 20 of our ranch hosts doing living history reenactments, engaging with the public, and sharing the story of ranching. We also partner with many different student and community groups across the Texas Tech South Plains, in addition to other institutions of higher education. And that ranges really from the ones that you would think of automatically, like animal science and meat science and range management, but also includes things like archaeology and architecture, entomology, and talking about the importance of pollinators to maintaining the prairie. And so we tell the story in a vast variety of ways. In the spring, we have a great event called Ranch Day, where we'll have 4,000 to 5,000 folks come through and learning different aspects of ranching. We partner with about 30 different student and community groups to put on that event, but you can see the smiles that it puts on the entire community's face to get to come out for Ranch Day. We also partner with other groups like the International Cultural Center at Texas Tech University to do an event called Gone to Texas, which are field trips entirely devoted to telling our story, predominantly about the impact of Spanish and German immigration to Texas. And so we highlight in that in partnership with the ICC, but we also do field trips. We pull in students and schools from about a 200-mile radius from Lubbock that bus in to participate in field trips at the National Ranching Heritage Center. We also bring a national eye to Lubbock and Texas and the ranching story. We do an incredible award called the National Golden Spur Award, where we recognize an outstanding rancher who's made contributions to the ranching and livestock industries. We do partner with 5 other agricultural organizations, so the Texas Cattle Feeders Association here in Amarillo, as well as Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association based in Fort Worth, the National Cattlemen's Foundation in Denver, the American Quarter Horse Association in Amarillo, and Texas Farm Bureau to actually present that award, but it's given annually to somebody who's made amazing contributions. Several years ago, we also implemented a Working Cowboy Award. We couldn't have ranchers if we didn't have folks that were out there actually doing the work. Our first recipient was Boots O'Neill. Boots just turned 91. He continues to ride daily, except for like days when I make him come to the Ranching Heritage Center and to be part of a panel or something, but then he's always mad at me. We have a great Western art show and dance on the patio as well, where we bring actually people from all across the country to be part of our Summer Stampede show. And then maybe our most beloved event is called Candlelight at the Ranch, where we put out about 5,000 luminarias throughout the entire park. About 20 of the structures are manned by volunteers doing living history as they would have been during the holidays. And we'll have 8,000 to 10,000 folks come through on 2 nights. So it is a major undertaking. It takes about 300 volunteers per night to put on that event. But similar to Dr. Hay and what they do here at the Panhandle Plains, we also have an amazing Western art collection, and so we curate extensive exhibits that tell the story and our culture and values through incredible Western art. We have a great T.D. Kelsey exhibit up right now if you have time to come through there. But we also share the story. We continue to do a print publication called The Ranch Record that goes out to members of the public as well as our 1,700 members that are scattered throughout the country, telling the story of Texas and beyond. So for our entire period, we have done an amazing job, I think, of telling the history and heritage of ranching. But more and more, we had folks coming through that would actually ask the question, what is a ranch? And as folks have gotten farther and farther removed from production agriculture, that's probably a natural question to ask. And as we got to looking around our facility, nowhere had we had to explain, because in the mid-1960s, nobody thought we would ever have to tell what is a ranch. But we do. And talking about the ranching and the beef industry and how that impacts us even up to our lunch today. And so we partnered with author and rancher John R. Erickson to produce a series of books that we call the Ranch Life Learning Series. Those books tell all about ranching through the voice of Hank the Cow Dog. And similar to what our friends at TEA are doing, we use those examples from ranching to teach science, social studies, and reading literacy to schools all across the great state of Texas, and now we're beginning to spread beyond our own borders. But they tell things like, what is the difference between a farm and a ranch? What do ranchers do on a daily basis? We explain the business of ranching. We talk about cowboys and horses and ranch wildlife and how ranching and wildlife can be symbiotic and beneficial to both areas. And we've published about 150,000 of those books. We've taught over 1,000 school teachers and educators in how to use the curriculum. We've distributed them all across the country, and we're beginning to partner with folks like Texas Beef Council, National Ag in the Classroom, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, to share these amazing stories because they tell the story through the voice of this dog in ways that industry really can't. And so we think there's tremendous value there. But of course, it also, being a museum, it also led to a physical exhibit. And so last October, we were proud to actually open the Cash Family Ranch Life Learning Center, which is an immersive, hands-on, indoor-outdoor exhibit that tells all about modern ranching with Hank the Cowdog as our guide. And so you begin, as all good exhibits do, through the gift shop. We have an orientation theater where John Erickson actually himself steps out of a Hank book. He tells our guests what they're going to actually be seeing in the exhibit. Obviously, at our heart, ranchers are grass farmers, and so prairie ecology and stewardship of the land is a critical story. So we do that in what we call the prairie ecology area, as well as the tools that we use to manage rangelands and how we do interact and benefit wildlife. The business of ranching obviously is a critical part of the story, and we can't stay solvent if we're not financially sustainable, and so we talk about that. Those tables you see in the image below there are actually simulation games where you get a scenario, you have to meet the challenges of the ranch. If you have any money left at the end of the year, you win, and it's really, really hard to win. We also wanted to bring Hank's Ranch to life because in so many instances, we may be the only example or way that folks actually, or that kids especially, get outside to actually engage with a ranch. So we brought the M-Cross Ranch to life at the Ranching Heritage Center, complete with Wolf Creek. We do have a running creek with an entire water area. One of the most popular aspects, I don't have a picture of it, but we have hand pumps that actually flow into our arroyo so kids can actually see how water runs and you can be manipulated. We have dams and areas where they can actually manipulate the water. They already destroyed the first set of hand pumps that we installed, so we had to install heavier duty hand pumps. But it's a great way for actually kids to get hands-on, but to learn about ranching. We also have to have the feed truck, and on Hank's Ranch, you have the ranch house, the machine shed and horse barn, and the cake house, which all tell different aspects of the ranching story. The other thing that's extremely popular are the roll-up windows in the truck. So, but we also tell the story through a wide variety of ways. We have gallery talks in our galleries. We put on multiple symposia, everything from quail management seminars to range management seminars we just got through partnering with Meat Science, talking about beef on dairy, cross cattle, and what that impact will potentially have on the industry. We put on, actually, I think we're doing 12 different educator workshops this summer, teaching educators how to use the ranch life and other curriculum, and we have extensive children's programming. So our next future is to actually, we are embarking on a capital campaign to raise $40 million to build what we're calling the Red Steagall Institute for Traditional Western Art. And so that will be a learning institute to pass along from masters to potential students in photography, painting, sculpture, poetry, and songwriting, as well as bent spur making and boot and saddle making, how to perpetuate not just how do you build a bit and spur, but our culture and values. And so we just applaud the work that the committee is doing to join the fight, and we look forward to working with you. Sure, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. I saw that Henry Crawford made the photo list several times.
Henry's a good friend and a great volunteer.
And it looks like he's cooking tongue in one of those, which is one of his signature dishes.
It is.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. I was with you all in 1982, so
ma'am.
it was a while ago. And obviously, you all have really taken a lot of this to heart and started to reach out to the community and to the school and to tech and the students and educators, and I think it's wonderful. I'm suitably impressed. Thank you.
Well, just to follow up on that, it would not be possible without the support of the ranching industry. Every physical thing, we are part of the university. I'm a university, Texas Tech University employee, but every capital campaign has been privately funded. As I mentioned, about 65% of our budget is privately funded through the Ranching Heritage Association. And of those 1,700 members in 44 states, many of them have never visited our facility, but they believe in our mission and what we do to share the story through so many outlets. Yes, sir.
Commend you on the upkeep and maintenance of all those structures. We know the challenge of that, and that's amazing. And I'm sure you use them to teach restoration and preservation and all those things.
Yes, sir. We partner with, various aspects of Texas Tech University to teach restoration, architecture, but also, maintenance is an everyday deal.
Sherry, do you have any questions? Okay. Greg, you good?
Maybe just one quick question. Obviously with the fires earlier this year, have you been able to figure out how to address that? Because I think educationally it'd be so important to a lot of the people that come through and how that's affected the ranching community, especially in the Panhandle.
Sure. Obviously, we have so many ties to folks. In fact, the Turkey Track Ranch that actually houses Adobe Walls, and we have very close relationships with those folks. But no, we highlighted all of the fires in our most recent issue of our magazine, talking about both the humanitarian efforts, but also the impact to the range itself. And so we'll continue to share those stories and pass that along to people around the country.
That's great. That's great.
I had a conversation one time with a representative from a state agency that will remain unnamed, who did not like the idea of moving buildings and creating what he called building zoos. But what I saw was 80 John Wallace's house about to be turned into termite powder. Or it could come up here, no longer in situ, sorry, but it's now preserved for future. And as anybody that's ever had to care for these old buildings know, everything is edible. And there's always something eating it. So, man, that's a big chore that you guys have taken on. But now to take the room down a little bit, I just saw a news feed story about carbon taxes on cattle. And this is coming to a political debate near you. How do you deal with that sort of conversation? Back in the day, 90% of Texans were involved in agriculture. Now it's under 2%. And so you've got somebody that's going to come in on a yellow dog from, Dallas, let's say, and they've been steeped in this sort of, cows are bad because they're killing the planet and it's going to kill us all. How do you deal with something like that?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I appreciate that question. It is a challenge. Obviously, the narrative is different than when we first, but that's a big part of the reason why we built something like the Ranch Life Learning Center. We tell the real story. I think agriculture and the cattle and beef industry have an amazing story to tell. And just my friend Ben Weinheimer wanted me to make sure that we are sharing, the story of Texas cattle feeders and Southwestern cattle raisers as well. We sequester far more carbon, especially in grasslands, than are contributed through cattle farts. And so,
is that now part of the record? I want to make sure that gets into the record.
So yes, we have folks that potentially come through our doors that have a negative, outlook toward ranching. We actually just did a master's research study that says, the vast majority of our folks, and probably are coming from the South Plains and West Texas, have an overall positive perspective toward ranching, but we make it even better. And I think if we just continue to be out there, we tell our story, we share the facts. And the other thing that we are learning is to do it through the voice of this dog. As I mentioned, it's a little different even than it coming from the Texas Beef Council or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or, all respect to Josh, Texas Cattle Feeders. It's not coming from industry. It's coming from a real rancher named John Erickson, who ranches in Perryton, Texas, and this dog. And that changes the narrative substantially. And we've found it receptive, opening doors all across Texas and beyond.
Well, thank you for coming in and sharing that. I'm ready to swing by the Ranching
Please
Heritage
do.
Center on the way home.
Doors are open.
Man, that's cool. All right, thank you for coming out. All right, we're now to the final testimony of the day. One note I want to point out is that we have two members that need to catch a plane, and so we need to have them rolling out of here at 3:45. So I will try to limit my comments. But anyhow, we now call Ms. Barbara Stevens with the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. She's the national historian of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas to testify to the committee.
Okay,
Thank you for
yes.
being here.
I thank you for letting us tell our story, and Texas history is our story. It's like all of you with your education, it's what we have a passion for. So a little bit about our history, not much. We're founded in 1891, a passion. It was founded with a passion. The two ladies, Hallie Bryan Berry and Betty Ballinger, had gone out to the grave of our first president, interim president, Burnett and Sidney Sherman, and it was a mess. And they had grown up in the Texas Veterans Association, so they were aghast that these illustrious men had weeds all over their. So Hallie's father was in 91 the head of the Veterans Association. So I imagined him dragging her every year to those meetings. So they sort of had this passion for education. So 133 years later, we still have that passion for not letting that Republic story die. And I'm afraid we're having a hard time getting the lesson out now. But our mission is to perpetuate the memory and the spirit of those who achieved and maintained the independence of the Republic of Texas, to provide educational programs of the highest caliber. And in our mission, it says with TEA, educational research into Texas records, preserve historic documents, and encourage the publication of historic records. We've done that. Secure and memorialize historic sites. And honestly, we've done a little bit of that. We had the Alamo for 110 years with no funding from the state. So it was one of those, you had to have a fundraiser every time you replaced something or did something. So some of the ways that we're doing it now, we've just built a new headquarters building. It has a museum and sort of aimed at the children to understand the areas in it. And we have a new research center. That research center will allow anyone to come in, research Texas history, research other history as well. You don't have to be a descendant of anybody, but it's opened and available. Then we have our library. And that library is about 40,000 documents and is housed in the Bayard County Archives, which is a 2-for-1 deal. It used to be an old Federal Reserve, so it has 2 vaults. So our documents are in the vaults so we can secure them. And the other part of the Bayard Archives are the Bayard records, the Bayard Archives. They have half of them. They loaned some of them out to, I think it was UT back in the day, and I was told they're trying to get them back, but that takes Texas history back to forever. I mean, those are awesome records, and they man that for us. Now, besides the records, I mean, we have some cool stuff there. If you go, you see the letter from Young Cloud, who was a guy who came down from Kentucky to fight for Texas independence, back to his father before he died at the Alamo. There's the two broadsides of the Texas Declaration of Independence. One of them, Samuel Maverick, is writing who's coming in late and comments on it. I mean, it's an awesome document. And we have ranching history here. You notice it ends at 1900, so there are several ranch collections that we have as well. Then we have the museum that we have at our headquarters building. And in that, you'll see we have the Come and Take It. We have several storyboards. We don't have a lot of artifacts. Unfortunately, you know, we have a few. We have Susanna Dickinson's petticoat. We have a lot of that. We have some dioramas that were built, and they're kind of interesting too. But we do have artifacts. And this, if this were, I think it would have to have changed. But we have at the archives in San Antonio, we have Theodore Gentile prints. Not prints. Gentile tells the story. He came from France in 44. And he shows the fandangos and the missions. I mean, he is everything that just oozes the heritage of that area. He came with Castro. I love them. I look at them. We have educational programs. We have a 4th grade and 7th grade essay contest. And we get, some of them are so interesting, and some of them are so bizarre. But hey, when my chapter got one where you were the bullet that went through several bodies during San Jacinto. So yes, little boys be very creative. But those give the students $500. They're conducted through our 10 districts. And we're finding it harder and harder to get in the schools with all the testing that goes on, the teaching to. So we have much more success with the private schools and the home schools. But these contests were just really, we did Colin McKinney and the Canary Islanders this last time. Canary Islanders have a rich, colorful history. So that was last year's. This year, we're doing Juana Navarro Alsbury. And she is a story that needs to be a movie. She grew up in she was born in San Antonio. Her father was Juan Angel Navarro, soldier for Loyalist. Her uncle was Juan Antonio Navarro, freedom fighter. So she grows up in the Viramundi household because her mother died and she shipped off to her uncle. So she knows Ursula Viramundi. She knows Jim Bowie. She's at the Alamo with her young son. Her husband of just a few months, I think, Alsbury, Horace Alsbury, is sent off as a courier. So she's there. I'm sure he's worried about her. She's with Bowie because her cousin married Bowie and she knew Bowie. So she's a story that if the kids can dig into it, there's the conflict between the two sides, there's the Jim Bowie, there's being at the Alamo and being let out to meet San Antonio. She's got if the 4th graders get their teeth in that one, that's gonna be a fun one to read. The other one is, I looked at 7th grade. By 7th grade, they're kind of critical thinkers. So it's birthplace of the Republic of Texas. Is it where the Declaration was signed? Is it where the battle was won? Or is it where the first government was formed? And no answer is going to be wrong. It's going to be based on their critical presentation of the argument. And having read some of these, I think they can do it. But that's sort of a passion. The students win $500, come and present their essays at our annual convention. Then we have a teachers contest, and they submit an essay or a paper about how they teach Texas history. And those are, they come up through the chapter to the district up. And they come to our convention and present their paper. We give the teacher $750, we give the school $1,000 to use in their Texas history programs. And it's fun. I mean, it's a lot of people, that's what they look forward to. I heard, oh, and one of the students this year couldn't present, and unfortunately, we didn't have someone read her essay, and boy, did I get comments. Then we have promote the, our museum promotes an art contest with students. And we've used some of these as, some of their results as postcards and things. They're just awesome. About 2008, we had a gala in San Antonio, and the curator of the Alamo at that time was Bruce Winders. I don't know whether anyone knows Bruce, but Bruce had this wild idea. He prepared a trunk with all the things that talk about, you know, the close of the Republic, the food, kind of everything like that. And he presented it and he says, I need 10 of these, one for each district. Cough up. At the end of the day, we had the $10,000 for Bruce's trunks, and they're amazing. We use them, each district uses, I've replicated it so I don't have to borrow it from the district rep. But we take them to schools, we take them to other areas, and they're neat. I mean, they have a T block. Who knows what, that's fun. Nobody knows what a T block is. They don't know what sugar looks like in a cone. It's kind of fun. It opens their eyes to, oh, geez. In encouraging research, we do a Mamie Wincox Award, and that Mamie Wincox Award is to a daughter who writes a monograph on some area of Texas history. The last one submitted was colonization of Texas. They're not reviewed by my committee, they're reviewed by a panel of historians. They're kind of neat. I want to submit one of those someday. Then we award, the June Franklin Naylor Award is for children's literature, and it has to be published within the last year. And they're awarded a little thing to put on it, and they're judged not by my committee, but by the library committee. And the Virginia Law Award is just one for the next grade up. And there's some awesome books in this collection. And then the library is compiling a story of frontier women in Texas. That was going to be the whole focus of the library. They're working their way to that as frontier women. You hear about the men, you don't hear as much about the women. Then securing and memorializing we found it's really interesting to be able to go to those grave markers of our citizens, our really veterans, those people that fought for independence, and then the defenders, because it wasn't an easy case after the revolution. We still had incursions to the fact that by the time they decided that Texas would be a state, Texas had troops down at the border, because they knew the minute it happened, war would start. Pretty insightful, weren't they? Then we have sites that we have in Fredericksburg, the Republic of Texas German Immigrant Trail, and we have a thing with the trail. We have a marker here. They're sort of like the Texas historical markers, but we've done them in Wyoming for the borders. We went to Wyoming, New Mexico, where the supposed borders of the Republic of Texas we've put markers up to mark those borders. We're still claiming our right. And those are interesting, but we have like a Courier's one, we have Lynchburg Ferry is marked, we've marked, and our current historic sites chairman is trying to collect all of those markers and put their physical description and a picture and things like that. It's kind of fun. I'm back now to securing and memorializing, and I've got a Sean Teal here because it's one of my favorite things in the world, and that's not a very good picture of it. But we do have lots of things in that library. It's just, it's amazing. And the fact that it's there in the Bayard Archives too, it just meshes it together. It's a good place. Of course, it's in boxes right now because they're replacing the shelving. Then we have several places that we either maintain as a chapter. The Ezekiel Cullen House, which is pictured here, is in San Augustine, and the chapter maintains it with an endowment. So I guess it keeps the bugs away. The J.B. Wells House in Gonzales is a little later in time than the Republic. It was left in a will to us, so the daughters own it, and our Gonzales chapter maintains it. And it's a nice little museum. It's got some cool things. Then we have the Cradle, the area that is the birthplace of the Daughters of the Republic. Then we have one chapter. It's so cool. They are docents for the old courthouse. So because they were docents, they gave them the jailhouse, I think it is. And so the second story of the jailhouse is absolutely donated to the history of Texas. So they have, it's if I could describe it, it's like the trunk that Bruce developed that exploded. I mean, they have everything. It's really fun to see, and they're very passionate about it. That's in Center, Texas. So that kind of, I was asked to kind of say, what do we do? That's kind of what we do. We try to get the stuff out. Now, we may want to skip this last slide. What can you do to help? I'm not a teacher, guys. I'm passionate about Texas history. We brainstorm some of the things that would help us. And that's if you have publications that you could promote our contests, that would be cool. We were able to promote both of the Texas history and the elementary school it's the Texan, which is a publication of the social studies teachers. And so we were able to get ads in that this year. We hope that will help. This year, I didn't collaborate with the TEKS because I just love these topics so much. Then we would like some consultation. We have the essays. We're thinking kids they're not as moved by writing an essay as maybe making a movie or doing slides. So just a little feedback to us, what could we do? Because we've got these programs, how do we maybe make them more relevant to kids nowadays? I know my son liked movies. I like PowerPoints, as you can see. So if we could get some way to have advice about what we could do to make our programs more effective, we'd appreciate that a lot. You guys have got all sorts of experience in that area, and that picks some brains. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that testimony. That was a nice trip through the DRT. You know, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And women have always been the great keepers of culture, and they passed it on.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys have been doing for the last, century and plus. One thing that comes to mind based on your last question, what can we do? Seems to me that what y'all are doing and what, say, the Bryan Museum in
Yeah.
Galveston, there's a lot of different organizations that have essay contests. I know part of our mandate is to come up, and there's a fly moving around. I'm not
I
having
know, he
fits.
was over here. I'm glad he's-
I've been trying to wipe that fly out all, this entire day. But there's a lot of different people that are doing essay contests. Part of our mandate is to come up with a governor's award. That it's important for us to see what's going on across the state.
Yeah.
And you guys have been consistent. I mean, the DRT
Yeah,
has been in the
unmovable.
fight for a very, very, very long time and a big part of that conversation. And it's funny, you bring up Bruce Winters. I've known him since 1985. And Bruce and I have been friends. We're collaborating on a project even as we speak. So I get it. You guys have been the face of Texas history in a very real and meaningful way for a very, very long time. I think that there's been a lot of people that have, or a lot of organizations that have risen up around you. And it may be some great opportunities for collaboration,
Yeah,
both at state level, but also with these local centers like what JP's doing there in Galveston.
oh, yeah, that's an
And,
awesome.
we did a big project with them through the Texas Center at Schreiner called I Am Texas, in which we had people do essays. I mean, we had students do essays on what it was, what that prompt meant to them. And they ended up publishing 1,000 of these kids' essays and stories and things in the world's largest book written by students. It was 5 feet by 7.5 feet. I mean, it was a colossal book. But that was kind of a cool way to get into the Guinness Book of World Record. But they are doing that every year now, and they're prompting it off of artifacts at the Bryan Museum. But I think that there's a natural ally there. And what they used in order to get that many essays written were the education service centers. And those become the great collection points for all the different school districts across the state. Anyhow, that's sort of my idea on what's going on.
Thank you.
Questions?
When your local chapters promote your contest, I assume that's the way it's done, is to the local chapters. Are the schools receptive to that, or are you having trouble with them, or?
It's very hard to get into a school. You have to start at the social studies officer level at the district, and it's really hard. And if we know a principal, sometimes there are down days at the end of the school that we can come in and do that. It doesn't enhance their Texas education, but it does give us a chance to do the living history part of you sharing like the trunk or stories. Like I said, the private schools are easier because they can adjust more what they're doing.
What about for your teaching award? Or
That
is
one,
that the school nominates that, or?
they nominate themselves, then they get testimonials from the school, and that's how that one was. They write their application, then they get the different, I'll be quick.
No, you're good. I was
No,
just
that's
checking
fine.
to make sure I was.
But, yeah, so I was thinking promoting in the social studies magazine, The Texan, which I think they said has 13,000 teachers in it.
Yeah.
It might be a chance for them to see there's an opportunity.
Well, you're promoting research.
It's 750 and 1,000 for the school. I mean, it's a little bit to help
You're encouraging research, you're encouraging writing, you're encouraging learning Texas history, all those things.
Yeah.
And you're appealing to greed, which is also, capitalism.
Right,
Well, that's the
Right.
only way you can get.
sure.
That's right, absolutely. I mean, you got to incentivize. So those teachers, are they, do they have to be daughters?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, one was a daughter this year, and I had a call from the President General, is that allowed? And I said, we don't have restrictions against it, and she is an awesome teacher.
Yeah.
Everybody that left convention,
I was recruited into the Sons of the Republic of Texas, but I didn't qualify. Because I let all your people fight it out. And then once the smoke cleared, my people moved in.
but
That's the
I
great
don't know
story.
what- I don't know whether the sons are that way, but the daughters, if you have a love of Texas history and you don't qualify, you can become an associate member, and you can actually be an officer at some chapter level.
As always, the women lead the way. Any other questions?
No, the only thing I was going to say, I thought your point, Don, on collaboration is really important. So I'm going to direct you to Charles over here as our new executive director of the 1836 Commission. I think he can really help you all out as you try to figure out ways that you can work on education. So I'll voluntold Charles over here.
Yeah, you just keep adding to the job after you hire him. I know how that goes.
That's all right, give him another hat.
Hey, Sherry.
Yeah, and as proof, Barbara, I'm very proud to have just been elected associate member of the Alamo Mission chapter, the Daughters here in San Antonio. So, but I had a couple of thoughts. One is, we have training programs at the Alamo for teachers. The Historical Commission has training programs for teachers. The Texas State Archives and I'm sure you're already working with them, but that's another place where that's an agenda you could get on. That would be
Okay.
easier to get into a school. And then finally, and I thought, Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I'm a senior fellow, and my colleague Cindelar who runs the place, we have this Forging Texas film series, and we are certainly available to come to meetings and show those films and talk about different aspects of Texas history. And it's not just the War for the Revolution. We have the first woman that led a cattle drive over the Chisholm Trail. We've talked about the Vietnamese and they're coming to Texas. First black film making in Texas in the 40s. So just in terms of telling your program chairman, we're a good program. And
Okay.
so
You'll be hearing from me. Thank you.
Barbara, blessings on you, darling. Coming to the museum was wonderful, and bringing all of our group from Huntsville, we all enjoyed it. But what you might consider, again, as my colleagues were saying, is the kids have to do research in order to write these papers.
That's right.
And all of these archives are available.
Yeah.
And there are DRT chapters all over the state of Texas. And so what they need to do is to work with the archives, use the archives that are available, and send the kids in. And when they start doing research and they actually read a letter from the period,
Oh, I know.
it just inspires them so much.
I cry when I
Yeah.
read that cloud letter. It's
They're
just so
wonderful.
moving. They're-
And
they're
so that's,
many.
if you work with the archives, you know, send the kids into the archives, and then it gives the teachers the idea that, you know, hey, these kids are learning to research, they're learning to read, they're learning to write, and then it makes you all much more important.
One of the things I did that we haven't done before is this year, because I told you I love PowerPoint. I prepared a PowerPoint introduction to each of the topics they can use with the schools to say,
Right.
you know, this is who she is. Because once you know who she is, you just want to know everything about
Yeah.
her you can.
Yeah.
Or this is the idea. I think seventh graders should be able to write a paper that's got
Yes,
some
they
critical
should.
thinking in it.
But this gives them an
Yeah.
incentive to do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate these.
Yes, co-sponsor with the archives.
Okay, yeah.
Get the archives to chip in some bucks.
See, there's that
What the heck?
collaboration.
I've
piece
never
again.
been good at passing the hat.
Get them to collaborate.
Collaboration's important.
Yes.
That's right. But yeah, put them to use and teach the kids how to use an archive, because
Yeah.
they're so important.
And
They are so
foster-
critical.
Yeah, and foster curiosity.
That's right.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
right.
if you make these
Yeah.
kids curious, I mean, that's when I started being interested in history was
Yeah.
about seventh grade.
When it becomes alive.
That's
I
right.
had a history teacher that made us write plays. And we were a little schoolroom, and we had the stage there. So I can remember to this day the script for Pike's Peak or Bust and making the covered wagon. So yeah,
Yeah.
it needs, I agree wholeheartedly. It has to be something that's gets their interest.
But get help, get help.
Yep.
Yeah, we need
Because
help.
I know you all, and I know you
You
do.
know.
But the thing is, you know, you've got all these wonderful archives. Put
Yeah.
them to use.
Okay,
Put them to use.
sounds good.
Thank you, darling.
Any other questions? All right.
Your number.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming out. Thank you for your testimony. All right. That actually gets us through our agenda for the day. And I appreciate everybody that came out. I appreciate Dr. Wendler and West Texas A&M University for being such a great host. Great lunch. I mean, they've hit it's a very high bar around here now.
Come back anytime.
Yeah, I was about to say, Dr. Hay, can we meet here next time too? You know, this is such a landmark in an important cultural institution, and working hand in glove with exciting things going on at West Texas A&M. This has been a very, very enlightening experience for me. My gosh, things are booming in Lubbock. That's cool to see too. So anyhow, this has been an afternoon well spent, in my opinion. That said, thank you all for coming out. And thanks for having the local representatives from our politicians and our government leaders on hand as well. And
Speaking of funding.
yeah, speaking of funding. So this concludes our business of the 1836 Project Advisory Committee today, unless there's any other business that we need to address.
I think it was great. Everybody was wonderful.
Yes.
Really helps us.
Good.
And it's just so encouraging what's going on out there with educating people about Texas history.
There's a lot going on, and one of the things that strikes me as we go across the state of Texas is how vast it is, and the fact that there's people doing a lot of the very same sort of things all over the state. So to me, one of the things that the 1836 Project Advisory Committee can do is help knit all these efforts together in some way to help facilitate communication between all these different organizations and projects. And part of it is by going out and having exactly these kinds of conversations. You know, I've never been prouder to be a Texan. I mean, I'm just amazed at all the stuff I've been seeing, and I thought that was kind of hard to do. But anyhow, it's been a great pleasure to be up here in this part of the state. Without any further comments, I will call this meeting concluded.
Yeah, I gotta come down to see you. I'm doing a trip down there. Bring the fans. Sure.
No,
It's always.
holler at me if you do. I'll give you the backside tours.
Good.